Welcome back to Los Caballeros, Fountain Valley, California, the 2015 Simple Green U.S. Open Race for 8. 5, stop number 1. The 5-time defending world champion Paul Brady from Ireland, serving to one of the 2 people that has defeated him in the last 12 years, Mando Ortiz from just down the street here in Norwalk, California.
Point. Is there a pencil around you?
Our referee, Luis Cordova, top 16 Race for 8 pro, and I'm proud to be joined by Dr. Daniel Zimmer. Dan, thank you for taking some time here. I know that you're also playing in this tournament, but great to have some of your insight here as we watch one of the best rivalries of the last couple of years. And you don't say that very often with Paul Brady because not too many people give him much of a match, but Mando Ortiz defeated Paul Brady a year and a half ago at the Players' Championship. The first time they played, nearly defeated him, lost 21-19 in that first game, and then they just played in New York and also a very close match. So whatever it is Mando does, and he does a lot of great things, it works against Paul Brady.
Do you have any sense about what it is that he has in his game? Because I know Brady has a way of really picking apart the game of really some of the finest players that are out there.
I think something about Mondo's stature and power. Mondo's able to stay so low, and Paul Brady is able to catch people really defenseless with those power drives, and Mando has those quick reflexes and ability to take Paul Brady's 2 or 3 inch high shots and hit them just as hard and just as low.
Well, you bring up a really good point, which is it does seem as though a lot of Brady's points come from putaways and drive power that's very low to the ground. And handball is a great game for short people.
5-0.
Yeah. And if you're already low, and Mondo's very strong in his lower body, so really quick, and that may give him that advantage of just making Brady hit 1 or 2 more shots, maybe make him try to go a little bit lower, maybe think about it, and take him out of that. He has such a confidence to his game, might slow him up a little bit.
But Dan, we're going to talk at length about this. You're a psychiatrist. Psychologist, excuse me. And Mando, unlike most players, I think has a belief that he wants to play Paul Brady. He feels comfortable playing him. And how big of a role is that?
Timeout. 1 minute.
And you bring up a great point, which is the attitude you take into a match, where somebody coming in against Brady may be very concerned about being humiliated on the court,
right,
or angry about having a draw that takes him into Brady, knowing that very strong chance that might be the end. But if you take the attitude of wanting that opportunity, seeing it as a chance to challenge your game, and find out where your holes are, and if you can score points against Brady, you can really do it against anyone.
Right.
So it can be a powerful learning experience, and that Mondo's had some success probably gives him that feeling like his game can break through to that next level. So putting himself in that position really says something great about the mentality he takes to the game.
And Dan, you just authored an article that is being very widely enjoyed here by the entire handball community. Mental skills, building the pyramid, and this is really a blueprint to developing what you just mentioned, that confidence and that self-belief and what you need to go in there and play against anybody, but including the best player in the world.
Right. Yeah. Well, and ironically, the feed you were just showing showed exactly what I was talking about. Is the difference of the 2 attitudes. If you come into handball, or really any endeavor or sport, where it's only about trying to win and thinking that losing is this intolerable thing, it's really a very poor attitude in terms of your long-term motivation. It affects the energy you can bring into the game. What likely happens, Mando comes into these experiences looking for that experience and wanting that opportunity, which probably is what helps him feel more confident and be more aggressive.
7-0.
Paul Brady, though, quickly coming out and asserting himself here. 8-0, and Mando Ortiz looked flawless yesterday. He ran through a former top 10 pro in Ricardo Diaz and a current top 10 pro in Daniel Cordova, just making them look ordinary, and yet he comes in here can't even really get himself in the service box.
Yeah, I got two lines.
And just from what I've seen so far, Brady looks incredibly sharp. And knowing that Mando's come close to him in the past,
red shirt,
probably also looking for the opportunity to really show his dominance.
Yeah.
So just winning, I don't know if that's enough in Brady's mind. He probably wants to come out and really show that he has no weaknesses. Part of what I think helps him win is just this air of invincibility.
You know, I wanted to talk to you about that, Dan, as we watch this rally unfold. Another point for Paul Brady. Dave Vincent, who normally sits in one of these seats, says that he thinks the reason Paul Brady is able to go in there and dominate people is because they know that he thinks he's going to win, and therefore it just becomes this cycle of,
second serve.
Well, I mean, I'm psyched out. And how can you not be, though, when for years you played this guy and you just can't even make a dent?
Yeah, and that is the nature of sport, and people remember that Tiger Woods had that effect on the golf community for a long time.
9-0.
To go in against someone with that much control dominance, it really is an intimidating factor. But in golf, and my hope is that this is what can be happening in handball, is that players see that and they step their level up also. They see what's possible. They see the way that Brady goes about his game, and they improve as a result. And whatever that edge is that he has starts to transfer into other players as they make a conversion to realize they have to take that next jump and just compete.
There's certainly a lot to that mental aspect, but when I watch and have played Paul Brady, he just has better shots. I mean, that's not something that's mental. I mean, that's
no.
I mean, the ball comes off his hand differently. His kill shots stay down lower. He's quicker. He's more consistent. He's fitter. And I don't want to downplay the mental aspect. But to me, he's physically on maybe 2 levels above his nearest competitor.
Yeah, well, yeah, the mental aspect of the game is certainly not going to overtake physical dominance. I'm sure that the circumstances were help, but you get a player who's just on another tier above. Unless you're doing some unsportsmanlike mental trickery, you may not really get anywhere.
Yeah.
What you say about Brady's game is, I think, very true, that when he's really setting up well, he's very fit, flexible, he gets down on the ball beautifully. You watch him take a swing, it's hard to believe he ever misses because his setup is just so beautiful. He really just can take over a point and just not let your throat off his foot. It's incredible.
Yeah. And it seems like that's what he's doing here. He played a young Irish man last night, 19-year-old Colin Crehan, and Colin looked really good against Paul. And I don't think Paul was expecting that kind of match in the round of 16, particularly from a 19-year-old kid that's from Ireland. But he was pushed, particularly in that second game. He only allowed 12 points. But for Paul Brady, that's a lot of points against anyone. And I think that kind of sharpened his focus, and also knowing that he's playing against a guy who did beat him about a year and a half ago. He's come out here like it's a final.
Yeah, well, Brady may not have a good second gear. You get guys that can play that 80% gear and just go in and try to win a game 21-14, 21-13, and they can say that they're conserving energy. Some guys can't do that. I know that I can't do that.
Right.
If I try to take my level down just to win casually, I'll probably more likely just lose a hard match.
Yeah.
And Brady may not be able to do that. He might have taken it a little too lightly and then had trouble stepping his gear up.
And sometimes when you start a match in that casual frame of mind, it's hard to flip to that 100%.
Absolutely. And that's maybe as part of what we're seeing as Brady came into this match knowing Mando's really challenged him, and just sometimes the way you start a match really dictates the way it's going to go for a long time. Playing your way into a match is a good way to fall way behind in a game.
And we've seen that a couple times today. Killian Carroll falling behind 19-2 in that first game. He makes a small comeback, but then he ends up dominating the second game and then losing the tiebreaker. Luis Moreno gets down 15-5 in that first game, comes back and wins that game. Then he's down 21-3, 7-1, and wins that. So a lot of mental toughness and mental fatigue, I would say, coming into play for those 4 opponents.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen any of those matches. It would have been very interesting to watch. And I haven't seen a lot of Moreno's game, but I've watched him when he played in Utah, And what I notice is he has periods where he lapses, and it's like his concentration isn't high. And he's someone who I think really needs to be very motivated and have his energy high in order to get his game up. And when it's up, it's truly remarkable to watch. But it may be fatiguing. It may take a lot of mental energy for him to do that. And it's much easier to get on a court and just be lazy, which is, again, a good way to lose.
I think despite you having not seen Luis play that much, I think he really just identified his problem perfectly, because there are stretches, and he did it in the first game and in the tiebreaker, where he's really untouchable. And then when he drops just a bit, it's as though he's not even close to the guy that he's playing.
Right, so he's a good example of someone who may not have that lower gear and probably needs a high level of motivation to ratchet up his physicality. I don't know why that would be. It could be a lack of physical training, so concern about his endurance, because it can take a lot to put yourself up on that level.
15 serves 1. Point.
Now 16-1 here. We're just 6 minutes into this match.
16 serves 1.
Including a timeout.
Unfortunately, the most that Mando's been able to do is keep the ball in play, and you're just seeing Brady just dictating every point.
I had a couple people ask me, when was Brady's prime? Was it 2012, 2008? And I just say it's an endless prime that started in 2005, from what I can tell. He just seems like maybe he's even better now.
It would be very interesting to see Brady play against some of the great defensive players, Fred Lewis or Dave Chapman, when he was in his prime. Guys whose game was completely different than his current competition. Because a lot of the guys, in fact, all of them that I've seen, emulate Brady's kind of a two-handed offensive attack. That the game is played with all kills and passes. There's not that same, sealing into the corners, finesse, and working the walls. I'd be curious to see how he'd respond to that.
Well, he and Dave Chapman played 11 times before that ultimate showdown in 2004, which was the largest single payout in handball history, won by Brady, $50,000. Chapman had won all 11 of those matches.
Yeah, and that was, I think Brady's game was just coming alive at that point. Because I saw him play, Brady came out to Toledo one time for three-wall, and that was a long war that David eventually won. I think the age gap, it was unfortunately a perfect miss, where David had been a top-flight winning pro for 15 years, I want to say, before then. And right when Brady's game took that level of a notch up, I think Dave was already eligible for the National Masters events.
Well, it's funny because they're only separated by 4 years. But Dave's prime was from 17 to 29, and Paul's prime started about 12 years ago when he was about 24. So Paul a little bit later in his prime, and it just, like you said, the perfect miss. 2004, 2005 would have been the ideal time for them to be playing, but that's when Dave stopped.
Yeah, well, you can, this is certainly no offense to Dave, who I think is probably one of the greatest players I've watched. But if you look at them physically, you could see why that would be. David put a lot of miles on his body, played long, grueling matches, wore his opponents down, found their weaknesses, and exploited them. Paul is in tremendous physical condition. You can see why he's aging well. He's lean, he's fit, he doesn't have any extra baggage on him. And he plays to win points quick, so he's not putting a lot of mileage on himself. It is funny how handball players peak at different times. I'm still waiting for mine.
Well, Dan, I think you've won, and I don't want to shortchange you here, but I'm going to say at least 20 national titles, both indoor and outdoor.
24.
Okay, so I said at least 20.
You're in the ballpark.
I mean.
Yeah, but you get guys who they're my age but are simply not at those events. They don't have the interest. They maybe have lost the motivation. Vince Munoz is my exact age. I would have a trophy case full of second-place titles if he was coming to any of those events. So some of winning these things is who it is that shows up.
But then again, you can't win if you don't enter.
Very true. Very true. It's another interesting question is how Vince and Sean Lenning would do in Toledo playing each other.
I agree with you. I think that would be a fascinating match. I didn't see Vince as much, but I've seen a lot of Sean, and to me, he just seems completely unbeatable out there.
Well, which is exactly what people said about Vince, and he proved it 10 years in a row.
Right.
Vince's three-wall game reminds me in some ways of Brady's four-wall game. That every shot has intended purpose, and whether it's to win the point or put his opponent in distress, there's never a loose shot. I don't think that Brady could have imagined a better scenario than this after the two close matches in the past.
That's true.
Unfortunately, Mondo's had a couple of opportunities that he hasn't been able to execute, and the score indicates why. When you're given so few opportunities, you're scrambling around so much, it's hard to take advantage of a chance when you have it.
Point.
Amazing serve there. And Mando here is playing basically his home event. He lives just about 40 miles from here. Does that put more pressure on you, or do you think, does it help, or does it depend on the person?
Well, that's a good question. I know that in three-wall it helps, but that's because of the idiosyncrasies of the court. I don't know about four-wall.
We're going to pick up on that and much, much more with Dr. Dan Zimmett. After this 5-minute break, we're going to go to a really cool interview with Mando Ortiz that we shot in Las Vegas just last month. So you stay tuned, and after that interview, we're going to pick up the second game here.
I'm here with handball player Mando Ortiz. I just want to say congratulations. Players Championship last year. That was an amazing one to watch you at the finals there.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, I still didn't win the tournament, so I still got to prove something there, but I appreciate that.
Always the fan favorite, though. Why do you think that is?
I have no clue. I feel like I put my heart out on the court, and I feel like fans will really just look at that and they like it. I just put my heart to it.
Talking about yourself, which is kind of hard to do, but how would you describe yourself as a player and a person as far as handball goes?
As a player, I am like a aggressive player. I like to put my opponent to rush things out, get him going, and for me outside of handball, I feel like stay humble, Don't let a lot of things get to me, and be friendly, be respectful to others, and life will go on good.
Besides handball, what do you say is the most important thing to you?
Besides handball, let's see. My family, my handball family, that's all I got.
Talk a little bit about your family. You have a brother and a sister. All of you played handball growing up? That's how you got into it?
Yeah, we have a big family. I mean, all my fathers, they played, my grandfather played. We came to the streets of LA and we started playing big ball. Then some guy named Art Chavez came around and said, hey, you want to play small ball? So I played small ball and converted since I was 11 years old and took off from there.
I love this little picture that you have of you and Nadia Alvarado. You have the trophy. Did you win that? What went on with that?
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, I just recently seen that video and it brought back memories when I was a little kid running around the courts and stuff like that. And I actually won my first trophy there, and it happened to Nadia be there and take a picture with them since I was 6 years old.
And how motivational was that for you then, kind of moving up into handball and learning about it and wanting to stick with it?
Oh, now I grew up, I appreciate so much more. I love this sport inside out. You use your both hand, be ambidextrous. You use a lot of mental aspect. I just love it.
To even be out there now, tell me a little bit about 2010, hardest year of your life, probably.
Oh yeah, 2010 was a really, it was hectic. I was going to school at the time at Missouri State, and I was actually doing well in school and playing. I was playing around the states around there, and one time I felt worried. I felt like just my whole body shut down, and I felt like, well, why is this happening? Because I work out every day. I train for this, I train for that. So I went back home, get a checkup, and sure enough, I had to do with my heart. I was born with a heart murmur, and it was closing in on me, and my aorta was getting bigger than it should. So cardiologist said, yeah, you got to get open heart surgery as soon as possible. If not, you got 6 months to live. And I looked at the cardiologist like, really? Like, come on, I never broke a bone in my whole life, and you cut my chest open and you work on it. So that was a big, huge, I was going through a lot around that time. And look, a few things was in my personal life too, what went on that caused the problem too. So, but I couldn't let this bother me at all. I couldn't let people talk about me. Oh, Mando's done after surgery. I know I got to come out somehow, some way. I need to come up. I need to get out of this hole and prove everybody wrong. And I feel like I did that.
Was that you trying to be positive? Was that you having pride? What was it that kind of kicked in that made you become such a great player?
I mean, it's like a little both. I have a lot of pride in me. I have so much pride. I get that from my father. He has so much pride. He's very in Spanish, machismo. That's what it is. And yeah, that's where I get it from.
What do you love most about the sport?
I love about the sport, we get to interact with other different people, like around the world too. People come together and just be friendly as well. Instead of we have this competitiveness going inside the court, but outside the court, everybody's all friendly. So that's what I love about the sport. From the camaraderie of sport.
Yeah, me thinking about. Can you spell it?
Yeah, spell it out. Yeah.
So besides handball, what can people find you doing when you're not out there practicing for handball? What are you doing on your off time?
My off time is my off time is basically me playing handball. I know it's kind of like not the question, but I go out there, I cycle, I go to the beach and see the beach view. I go play handball. I come back cycling and I run out. And I go to concerts too. That's a whole different issue. Like going out too with my friends, have a good time. Just don't think about just handball, or work. You gotta have something else to enjoy yourself. So I do go to concerts, go to football games. Go to SC. I'm an SC fan, of course. Really, yeah.
I noticed that you're an LA boy. You like the Dodgers. Why the Heat? Why Miami Heat? I was noticing that you like
Miami Heat.
Yeah.
I don't like the Miami.
It's in your Facebook profile. You need to go in and change
Miami
that.
Heat.
Yes, absolutely.
No.
Sports teams.
I definitely got to go change that because I am a Laker fan. I'm a Dodger fan. Anyways, last time Dodger won the World Series, that's the day I was born, 10/20/1988. That's the very exact moment. Just want to share that.
I need to show you on your Facebook profile. I'm like, Miami? What's that?
No.
What's that all about?
I got to take that off.
So work-wise, what do you do?
Psychology also?
I have a master's and a PhD.
Oh, so that's why I thought you were a psychiatrist.
Zero.
Welcome back to Fountain Valley, Los Caballeros Sports Village. I'm David Fink alongside Dr. Dan Zimmern. Dan, not much we could say about that first game. Paul Brady in full flight as he appears to be to start game number 2. Just so aggressive and so powerful and so precise. Not much Mando could do in that first game.
Well, I'm hoping that Mando's defense is going to step up and he's going to be able to at least make him hit on the run. That was a defensive, that flick shot around his feet where I think he was hoping it was going to clip a wall around the back, at least move Brady back.
Point.
But he's gonna need to really step his defense up if he's going to be able to get into this game.
Paul is one of these guys, Dan, that is such an amazing front runner.
1-0.
But once he gets that lead, his game just elevates. And you say, well, how can you beat him? The only way to do it is to apply some scoreboard pressure, but then it's kind of that catch-22. How can you get yourself in the box to actually start scoring points? But if you're going to play the Paul Brady style game, and as you said, mostly everyone does play that game, you better come in there and have a great serve and be able to get some setups and some ace serves.
One disagrees.
Yeah, and you've played play, Paul. So
Yeah.
I guess my
Matt,
question
too.
really is how he responds when you're able to extend
Over here.
points.
Well, that's the scary thing
Matt.
about Brady is he wants
Matt.
to rally.
Matt.
His best game
Stand,
is his
ask him if you
rally.
can stand. Stand.
That was an extremely close serve. Difficult to see from our camera angle.
These are so tough. I thought it was good, but from that
3-0.
angle, almost impossible.
Cut out.
And that's a miss hit from Mando. Not
But-
really a sustainable type of winning
Zero
rally.
serves 3.
That was a good example of him making Paul move
Short.
and extending it at least a few shots, giving him a
Second
few
serve.
looks. He had a few opportunities to do something with the ball that point, and it all started with a better service return.
Cut out.
There's an atypical point for him to win.
Yeah. You know, Paul's
3-0.
lateral movement is something that's not discussed a lot, but in my opinion, the best I've ever seen. He moves side to side like he's floating across the court, and you don't see him diving much because he's just so quick with his legs and always in the right position.
Cut out.
Well, that is where every sport similar to handball, and I think the argument could be made pretty
Zero
much
serves
every
3.
sport starts from the ground up.
Yeah. I mean, you see a guy like Djokovic who's completely dominating men's tennis and has for the last, I know you're a huge Djokovic fan.
Yeah.
He has dominated for the last 4 or 5 years, now finally starting to get the credit for it, I think. But he's just the best mover that's probably ever played. He shrinks the court, and then he combines that with probably the best ground strokes, maybe in the history of the sport, and the best return to serve. And then what are you left with?
Well, and that's a great example of how a defensive player can be dominant. Djokovic doesn't do anything remarkably other than keep the ball in play and high pressure. He has a
3-0.
very good serve.
Yeah.
He does have remarkable return serve.
Yeah.
But he wins by just continuously applying pressure on his opponents
4-0.
and making it so hard to score that eventually you do something foolish with the ball, go for a low percentage play, or you just wear down.
Yeah.
Paul doesn't seem to give players the opportunity to wear
5-0.
down.
No. And it's funny, when you play Paul, you're not really tired because the rallies are so short, and it's hard to really even feel like you're getting much of a workout.
Cut out.
And that's a beautiful shot that Mando just hit. And again, it was his third or fourth shot of the rally. And started with him putting Brady a little bit
0
on his
serves
heels
5.
after the return to serve.
That's a great serve from Mando. It
Point.
looked like it might have slid on that side wall, but Paul Brady does not ask for a slide.
1 serves 5. Short.
What do you think, Mondo's
Second serve.
most? What makes his game as effective as it is? Do you think it's hard? It's hard to see because he's
Right.
really not being allowed to play his game here.
Mando is probably the best in the game, besides Paul Brady, at flat rolling the ball with either hand from anywhere on the court. He really can flat kill the ball from the deep
5
court with
serves
both
1.
hands, and he's just got a very good serve, and he's looking to kill the next shot. And that's really, you know, the strength of his game.
6 serves 1.
That incredible offense, and he's got great power as well. So what Paul Brady is doing to Mando right now is what Mando a lot of the times does to guys that are ranked outside the top 10, sort of just makes them look like they don't even belong on the court with them.
Well, this game may, if Mando comes back and watches it, give him a number of different things
7
to
serves 1.
reflect on. And not being in there facing the serve myself, maybe looking at Brady's serve and trying to get a sense of reading it better, and perhaps working on some of his defensive shots from those very deep court positions. Being able to maybe wrap the ball or send it to the ceiling, at least get it to drop into the wall.
In previous matches against Brady, Mando has had a very good left fist return to the ceiling, which he has not been able to execute today. And I think it's because he's not reading Paul's serve at all. He doesn't have a sense if the serve is going right or left, therefore not able to get in a position to do anything but just flip the ball back.
Now, does either player hop the ball?
Paul Brady has a shot that hits the floor and just completely straightens out. So when he hits pass shots that you think are going to bounce into the side wall, he hits them cross court, they completely flatten out and die. Even though he's hitting them harder than anybody, they still double bounce before the back wall, and there's some good handball from Mando.
Thank you. Point.
2 nice kill shots in a row. But he comes over the ball and has so much leverage using that whole kinetic chain, starting from the ground up, like you said. And his ball hits the floor, and it's over. You know, most guys, the ball hits the floor, it'll either come off the back wall or bounce into the side wall, and you have a chance. But
well, that makes kill shots particularly difficult to pick up. You have so little time. And one thing that makes Alvarado Jr. so great is every kill shot has just a little junk on it that it comes out hard, and then you think your hand's behind the ball, and then it'll spin to the side of your hand, and it just gives it a whole nother level of difficulty. You wonder how it's possible to retrieve them.
Yeah, and I feel the same way about Nadi, and Paul's does it even a little bit more than that. And Paul also, when he hits kills, particularly in the corner, they're almost like flat rollouts. And he does it consistently. I remember the first time I played Paul, 2010, I think he hit 15 completely flat rollouts in one match.
Well, typically, if he were being coached, he would be encouraged not to do that because it's usually not necessary to get that ball that low. But he seems able to get so low to the ground and have a nice flat swing. He hits the ball in a straight line into the wall.
Yeah.
I guess he can safely do it.
That's the difference I see between the American players and the Irish. The American players, with the exception of Mando, who's lower to the ground, tend to stand up taller when they shoot the ball, and they're hitting with a descending angle to the front wall. And you see the Irish guys like Killian Carroll, who we just watched, and Paul Brady really getting low and hitting the ball parallel with the floor. And a lot of that has to do with their builds compared to the Americans' builds. You see Sean Lenning, who's over 6 foot, Luis Moreno, who's rated 6 foot. Emmett is close to that as well, and it's only the tendency is you're standing up more.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Mando just hit a great setup into the floor to put Paul back into position to serve. He's right in this game and really seems to be cranking it up. He's a little bit more dictating a point. You can see he was able to put Paul a little bit on his heels during that, wrapping the ball around and moving him to the back court. Looked like he got a little tired there. He made some wonderful retrieves in that point.
We've seen this scenario numerous times already early in this event where a guy loses the first game badly, and then he's right back in the match in the second game, and we're seeing that early here in the second game.
Well, I don't know that Brady might have come into this game feeling a little bit overly confident after how quick he went through, but my hope is that Mando maybe had some nerves in the first game and now decides, what do I have to lose? Just going to go at it.
Now Mando is starting to get some good looks.
Yeah, and it's a shame to see him missing shots. It's obvious he's frustrated with himself after missing that ball.
1 minute scores 9
It's going to take a second to think about it.
Dan, you mentioned 2 rallies ago when Mando made a couple great retrieves and then missed that last one. He looked a little tired, and I think that's why he missed those last 2 setups, because he is a little bit fatigued. You know, Mando Ortiz had open heart surgery in 2011, and I'm not sure that any top athlete in any professional sport has ever had that kind of procedure and come back and almost all the way back to the top. I mean, he's been ranked since then in the top 4. Right now he's ranked 5th. It's really a remarkable story, but I think, and I'm not a doctor, but you'd have to think it's harder for him to catch his breath with that kind of heart murmur that he had and maybe that these long rallies, despite how much Mando puts into his cross training, still harder for him to recover than maybe somebody that has not had that problem.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what consequences there were long-term to his heart, and whether that is in fact something that is an ongoing problem. I had known that he had the surgery. I really not aware of why he needed to have it or what the long-term effects were. Some people are able to have the surgery and come back better than they were before now that whatever the problem was is reconciled. And he certainly looks extremely fit.
Yeah.
From what you've said, Mando doesn't tend to win matches on fitness.
Right.
And playing at the pace that Brady sets, you're using every second is a sprint. So you're not really given an opportunity to coast into a ball. And you play 8 or 9 shots at that tempo, you've drained the power out of your body. It's very hard to find any push at that point. You need some seconds to recover for your muscles to come back into play.
Mando works construction, actually goes underground doing pipeline, and he bikes to work, which is a good ride. He does sprints once he gets to work at about 6 in the morning. He works all day doing, heavy lifting, and then he'll bike to the handball courts and play until it's dark. So he's working out for 10 to 12 hours a day.
Wow. Well, and all of that is fabulous conditioning.
Point.
Now, Mando closed the gap to 2, had a chance to make it even closer at 6-7, but now Paul Brady doubling Mando up at 10-5.
10 serves 5. Point.
Well, that's a beautiful deception. Really, body language was going left, and just strong enough to be able to put that ball right over the line on the right side.
Short.
Do you think that deception is a good idea for a serve, to indicate yourself going one way but then hit it opposite side?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you think a player develops that or can work on it?
Well, personally, I go in and try and make it look like I'm hitting every serve to the left, because the majority of my serves do go to the left. I'm left-handed. So I try and keep the same motion and the same body mechanics, and then at the last second just kind of flick my wrist and hide it for as long as possible. And sometimes it works, and for some reason, some players read it better than others.
So most of how you keep the ball the opposite direction is from your wrist.
Yeah. And a slightly different bounce.
Flat out.
That was a wonderful retrieve Mando made in the front court. I'm not sure what he's asking for. He thought he was hindered coming back again. This was practically a dead kill against anyone.
Right. But that's what I mean, Dan. That's the kind of shot Mando can hit with either hand from anywhere on the court.
I think that Brady, though, knows his game well enough that when he sees him setting up, he knows there's only a couple of options, and all of them are in the front court.
Yeah.
Because Brady was perched just right up there, further forward than you would think from that position, where if a player tends to hit a V pass or wrap the ball, you would expect him to be standing a little further behind. It's good anticipation, just knowing Mando's game.
Yeah. And that was called a point, right?
Yeah, I don't know sure what Mando was
5.
asking for. There might have been contact as he was going back, but that pass looked pretty impossible.
Right.
Bad bounce.
Such a difficult court to referee. And Dan, I know you did some refereeing. I don't know if you were on this court, but you've got that camera hole in the front. The ball's sliding. There's bad bounces on the back wall and the ceiling.
Flat out.
And you've got to worry about all that while also calling the hinders and the screens. It's just almost an impossible job. It's certainly a thankless job.
Well, thankfully, I found the handball
5 serves
community
11.
to be pretty generous, knowing that it's difficult to ref, and I haven't seen a ref out that has purposefully made calls in favor of one player or another. Not that the heat of the moment can bring out the bad side of just about everybody, but in general, handball players tend to be pretty kind about it. Unfortunately, that
Second
glass
serve.
window is from a center serving position, very much in play on a drive serve.
Look at Paul, still there.
Cut out.
Mando hanging in. He certainly has the
5
firepower
serves 11.
to get back into this match. He's going to have to really execute, though.
Cut
On
out.
that, those were just two shots just not typical of what you would expect him to do. Hung the
11 serves
serve
5.
up high and then had another chance and seemed to try to float the ball straight into the crease of the floor. It's a very low percentage
Point.
effort.
Timeout. 12
And that's a
serves
real
5. 1
smart
minute.
call. I think he's sensing the game getting away from him.
Yeah. You know, Dan, I've tracked calling timeouts, and the person that calls a timeout has lost the next rally something between 68 and 74% of the time. So, you know, there's this myth that you call a timeout and stop the momentum, but the statistics don't really prove that. So as a professional sports coach that you are, what do you recommend? I mean, I know you said to call a timeout there, but is there anything else that you can do? And if you do call a timeout, what do you do during that timeout to try and regroup?
Well, unfortunately, sometimes you're calling a timeout, like in this case, because you're down either on yourself or you feel the other person has a lot of momentum. And if you walk into the timeout and keep the mentality of, I'm losing, I'm not playing well, and you just allow that to resonate for 60 seconds while you're just sitting there, that you're coming in with very negative energy. If you use the timeout to really pump yourself up, consider your strategy for a few minutes, well, if you had a few minutes, consider how you want to come in and what you need to do to turn it around. Maybe bounce a little bit around, get your legs fresh, obviously drink a little bit of water. Try to rejuvenate your spirit.
Short.
That is a very interesting statistic. I would have not thought that it was that high.
Yeah. In
Second
fact, at
serve.
one point, we had 18 times in a row that a timeout was called, and the person calling the timeout lost the next rally. You know, Dan, in poker, when you lose a bad hand or make a bad play, they call it going on tilt, when you kind of lose your mind. And that happens, obviously, in every
13
sport.
serves
But
5.
how do you keep yourself from going on tilt? Either because you're just not
Point.
playing well or your opponent's just completely outplaying you. I know that you're probably one of the strengths of your game is your mental capacity, but for other people that go and they
14
get down on
serves 5.
themselves for whatever reason, how do you bring yourself out of that
Short.
when things are happening so
Heels,
quickly
call
in
it
your
short.
mind?
Well, yeah, that's a
One
great
agrees, one
question.
disagrees.
And if the momentum is really shifted against you and
Second
your
serve.
energy is bad, the other person feels very much in control, that's a very difficult circumstance. And there's a number of things that you can do. I use a lot of positive self-talk.
15 serves 5.
I try to change my orientation, just to think about one point at a time and try to grind it out, try to make the points difficult to earn.
Point.
So I try to shift what my strategy is. Sometimes I'll go for a different serve. I'll try to
16
return a
serves 5.
little differently. But mostly my self-talk is about making it difficult for my opponent and seeing how he's going to respond. Sometimes when
Last
you're playing
timeout,
someone
score
who is
17,
well
serve
up on
5.
you in a
1
match, if you start making the points hard to earn, then they can really start to get frustrated, and you've got nothing to lose at that point. Sometimes you can come well back. I was down, I think I was down 15-5 in the second game against Joe Harris. I ended up catching him at 16. Unfortunately, I lost that game 21-20. But that was a good example of I changed my serve to a Z into the left corner, and I just decided I was going to try to just play each point and try to make the points hard. And I was able to – I wasn't even thinking about the score at that point, and then I'm back in the match. Now, what you'll sometimes see, and this happened to me too, is as soon as you catch your opponent, everything shifts again.
Right.
And it's very hard to sustain whatever got you to catch up. It's very hard to sustain that momentum past your opponent.
Almost as though you were playing as the underdog, and now that you're not the underdog anymore, it's become far more difficult.
Well, yeah, you start thinking about winning the game
serves
instead
5.
of just being in the game. And when you step out of the present, get irritated about things that are done or start thinking about winning or losing, then you're not focused on the points as they come, and you're playing. That's just a very difficult way to win a match if you're not in the present.
The problem with playing Paul Brady is, you know, you say to yourself, I want to make it hard on him, but Paul doesn't give you a chance to make it hard. He barely gives you a chance to return the ball.
Well, yeah, and I guess when you deal with otherwise equal players, a lot of these factors really can start to become a big part of the game. But I mean, if I stepped on the court with a professional tennis player at my current level, if I stepped on the court with both these guys, it would be the same thing, regardless of what their mental or capacities are. Their skill level is just well above mine.
So it's Paul Brady scoring the final 14 points of this second game. He wins this quarterfinal match 21-2, 21-5 over a guy who beat him a year and a half ago. So our semifinals, Dan, are set. It's Paul Brady against Sean Lenning and Luis Moreno against Robbie McCarthy. That's about as good as it gets, and I think today was just about as good as it gets. We saw 3 fantastic matches. This one, a fantastic performance from Paul Brady. But we're going to take a little break here. Dr. Dan, I want to thank you for joining us. Maybe you'll be with us for the next match. I'm not sure what your schedule is, but we'd love to have you. So for Dave Fink, Dr. Dan Zimmett, Chris Garrad, Linda Manning, Jeff Kastner, Gene Kastner, Dave Vincent, Lolita Vincent, and the rest of the WPH staff, you stay tuned. We'll see you in a bit.